In this video, we're going to be going over exactly how much dividend income I made in the month of December from a $205,000 portfolio. And to break this down, we're going to be jumping into my do-it-yourself investor toolkit. We'll be looking at my investment dashboard, my dividend calendar, my daily dividend calendar, and like always, we'll be looking at a portfolio projection to see how long it will take me to achieve my long-term goal of one day being able to live off dividend income. And like always, if you'd like to be able to download this spreadsheet or any of my other spreadsheets and also get access to the ticker data add-on in Google Sheets that allows you to automatically import stock financials straight into your spreadsheet, then you can head over to tickerdata.com at the link in the description. Now, let's go ahead and jump in. I also want to say thank you to Seeking Alpha for sponsoring this video, but more on that later. Now, with the start of the new year, this is a great time to reflect back on the past year and analyze the progress that our portfolio has made. And if we go ahead and zoom in, we can see my portfolio value as of right now a little bit below $205,000, sitting at $204.6K. So overall, when we break this down, the performance has been very solid. We can see about $54,000 of that is coming strictly from gains. But if you've been keeping up with my monthly portfolio updates, my portfolio value is actually down quite a bit over the past couple of months. At one point, it was as high as about $216,000. So why is this? What's the reason for the sell-off? Well, like we already know, the S&P 500 over the past year was up about 24%, so it's performed very well. But if we take a look at the heat map of the S&P 500 over the past month, we can see there is some green in the tech sector, but for the most part, the market's been selling off pretty heavily over the past month. And along with that, we've seen my largest holding, SCHD, sell off about 7% in the last month. So it's no surprise that my portfolio has dropped in value. Now, here's what's actually exciting about this. This month was actually my largest amount I've ever received in dividend payments. And because I reinvest all my dividends back into my portfolio, I'm actually reinvesting those dividends at lower prices, which means I'm getting a better value for the stocks I'm buying, and I'm also going to get more dividend income from those reinvested dividends. So if we go ahead and zoom out and start to break down some other aspects of the portfolio, right now we can see I'm heavily invested in stocks. I'm in about 90% with about a 10% cash position. I currently have total holdings about 28, but I'm planning on reducing this closer to 25 over the next few months. If we come over here, we can see my cost and market value chart. Essentially, this is telling me how much capital I put in total to each position versus its current market value. So for example, right here, we're looking at SCHD. I have most of my capital here, and the market value is far higher than the amount that I put in. But we can get a better look at all this by simply looking at my growth chart. If we go ahead and zoom in just a little bit more, Broadcom, over the past month, it has absolutely exploded, and it's now a position I'm up about 360% on. In fact, if we jump back over to the heat map on FinViz, like I said, there's only a few companies in the green over the past month, but one of those companies is Broadcom. You can see they're up about 44% in just the last month. Now, there's plenty of other positions that have done very well in my portfolio, just not when you compare them to Broadcom, of course. If we look at Jefferies Financial, another company that's done really well, I'm up about 160%. JP Morgan, 128%, and Caterpillar, up about 107% right now. These are by far the best performers in my portfolio, but there's plenty of other positions that have done very, very well. They just don't look quite as big compared to Broadcom again. For example, Microsoft. The largest individual holding in my portfolio, other than SCHD, is up about 60.5%. Come over here and look at Bank of America, 65.73%. If we come over here, Visa, again, one of the largest positions in my portfolio, up about 44.5%. And if we come over here and look at Apple, we can see I'm currently up about 81.33%. Now, over the past year, I only added 3 new positions to my portfolio. I added Waste Management, up about 31%, Louis Vuitton, down about 6%, and then UNH, up about 12.23%. All 3 of these stocks are companies that I believe will help me achieve my long-term goal of living off dividend income. And I'm excited to hold them for the long term. Now, if we come up here, we can see my allocation. Like I've already stated, SCHD, a big position in my portfolio, but the 2 other largest positions are going to be Microsoft and then Visa. Other than that, it is somewhat fairly evenly divided. But if we scroll down, we can see my allocation by industry, and not including ETFs, we can see technology, one of the largest positions in my portfolio, coming in at about 16.6%. And keep in mind, Visa is technically a company that operates in the financial services sector, but I'd actually argue they're more of a tech company. So while financial services is about 12.3% of my portfolio, again, I'd argue some of this does belong in technology. But again, we can also see some sectors, such as real estate, makes up about 6.7% of my portfolio. Consumer cyclical, about 6.2. Come up here. Consumer defensive at 4.4, and then healthcare about 3.5. And then if we come down here, we have industrials at 3.4%. Now, there is other things we can break down on this spreadsheet, such as my future portfolio outlook, But we're going to come back and look at that just a little bit later in the video. But what I want to look at next is what everyone wants to see, my record month of dividend income. If we go ahead and jump over to my dividend dashboard, let's go ahead and zoom in just a little bit. If we come down here, we can see my historical monthly dividend income. In the month of December, I made $1,184.27 in dividend income. Again, a record month. And we're starting to see a clear trend upwards. Now, it's important to keep in mind that the majority of my investments are focused on dividend growth. What does that mean? Well, I typically buy lower yielding stocks that have the capability to increase their dividend payouts at a high rate over the long term. And here's why this is important. If we compare high yielding investments versus dividend growth stocks, we can see obviously high yielding stocks are going to pay out more in dividends for quite some time. But because dividend growth stocks over time continually increase their dividend payments, they eventually start to pay out more than high yielding stocks. And so yes, this is an example if we don't reinvest our dividends, but even if we do reinvest dividends, the same is actually true. It just takes a little bit longer for dividend growth to surpass high yielding investments. So there's not necessarily one that's better than the other. It really just depends on your goals. And because I'm investing for the long term, I typically like to select dividend growth stocks. Now, if we come up here and look at my portfolio value over time, again, we can see December sitting about $205,000, but just last month, it was as high as $216,000. So this is the lowest it's actually been in about 3 or 4 months. But again, because my long-term goal is to live off dividend payments, I don't actually have to be too concerned with how my portfolio value is changing over time. I'm more concerned with making sure that my portfolio is continually generating more dividend income every single month. For example, even though my portfolio value declined by about $11,000 this month, my expected yearly dividend income continued to climb higher. It's now sitting at $6,250, and my average monthly dividend income is now sitting at $520.88. That's $520 getting reinvested back into my portfolio regardless of how the market is performing. And this is why I absolutely love dividend investing. When done right, you don't have to worry about the performance of the portfolio value over time. You can just continually grow your dividend income until it's a stream of passive income you can live off of forever. For example, again, we're seeing fluctuations in portfolio value, but if we look at my projected annual dividend income over time, let's blow this up a little bit, you can see it only goes up and to the right because my projected annual dividend income climbs every single month. The only month where we saw a slight decrease is actually because I decided to sell out of some higher yielding positions. So in reality, this is growing every single month regardless of market performance. Now, if we come up here, we can see 2 different charts, dividend income by industry and dividend yield on cost. Dividend income by industry is not tracked by enough people because they think they're doing a good job simply by looking at how their portfolio is diversified. But what you have to understand is you want to know where most of your dividend income is coming from. Because if most of your dividend income is coming from one single place, then your portfolio might be far riskier than you realize. For example, someone could have a portfolio that's only 10% in real estate, but if 40% of your dividend income is coming from real estate, you're still too overexposed to that sector. And then if we come down here, we have dividend yield on cost. And this is something I harp on pretty often, but this is a pretty useful metric to track because it helps you better understand dividend growth investing. For example, Broadcom. This is one I love to use an example because my yield on cost is already sitting at 4.18%. But if we look here on Seeking Alpha, we can see the current starting dividend yield for this company is sitting at just 1%. Why is my yield on cost so much higher? Well, for a couple of different reasons. One, I did buy in at a great valuation when the starting dividend yield for the company was a little bit higher, but we also have to keep in mind they increased their dividend payments at a very, very high rate. Look at this. In 2014, they're paying out about 3 cents per share. And at the end of 2024, it was 59 cents per share. So that's pretty much a 20x increase in their dividend payments, which again will give them a higher yield on cost. So it's a pretty cool thing to see grow over time. And then if we zoom out and look over here, we can just see my dividend income by each individual position. So obviously again, SCHD largest position pays me about $3,400 in dividends every year. But then we have some big dividend payers over here. We have a position in Altria, pays about $380, Realty Income $334, and then Vici, one of the other big dividend payers, sitting at about $473. Now, what I want to do next is look at my dividend calendars and my daily dividend calendars. But before we do that, I'd like to say thank you to Seeking Alpha for sponsoring this video. Seeking Alpha is one of my favorite investment research platforms, and it's a tool that I've been using on a daily basis for years now. And one of the features I've actually been using pretty frequently now is the earnings tab. And you can easily see the latest quarter's earnings and expectations for the upcoming quarter's earnings. And we can actually even see earnings estimates over the next few years for these companies. So for example, we're currently looking at ASML Holding Company, and growth expectations for this company are very high. They're expecting double-digit growth and even in the 20s for the next few years. We also get access to dividend metrics. For example, we can see dividend scores right here. They give us dividend yield metrics, dividend growth metrics, dividend safety metrics, and then we've already looked at the dividend history, something that's very useful to look at for many of these companies. And then perhaps one of the coolest features is if we come over here and click on the peers, we can see some companies that are similar in structure to ASML. And if we scroll down, we can compare things like price return or all of these other different metrics, and it makes it very easy to compare these companies. For example, if we look at revenue growth year over year, what we can see is exactly how revenues have been growing for these companies. And then of course, we can see them compared with plenty of other metrics as well. So Seeking Alpha is a tool that I'm a huge fan of, and you can get a discount at the link in the description. Now, if we jump over to my dividend calendar, what this is going to allow us to do is to see exactly how much we're making each month in dividend income, how much each stock has generated in dividends in total, and most importantly, we can see our dividend growth over time. And the example I always love to give is Realty Income, and that's simply because they pay out dividends every single month, so it makes it easy to see how those dividends are growing over time due to two different reasons. They're increasing their dividend payments over time, and I'm also reinvesting my dividends. So you can see we started in the $5 range, and over the years, we've gotten up all the way close to about $30 as of my most recent dividend payment. So let's look at the stocks that pay me dividends in the month of December. To start off, we have Johnson & Johnson, about $31, Coca-Cola, close to $22, $28 from Microsoft, $28 from Realty Income, $23 from Bank of America, Domino's Pizza, one of my favorite dividend stocks right now, $14. If we scroll down, we can see close to $11 from JetBee, Target, $10.71, $24 from Visa, $12 from T. Rowe Price, $18.50 from Broadcom, another one of my favorites. And then my big dividend payment from SCHD came in at $906. Come down here, we can see Waste Management, $17.25, LVMHF, that's Louis Vuitton, $21.77, and then UNH, $16.86. And again, this totaled up to my largest month ever at $1,184.27. Now, if we go ahead and zoom out, let's jump over to my daily dividend calendar. And this is going to be really fun to look at for one main reason, and that's because we now have an entire year of dividend income. And we can see in the year of 2024, I received $5,937.74 in dividend income. And if we compare that to the previous year, in 2023, it was $3,475. So we saw a significant jump up in my annual dividend income over the past year. And if we go even further, look at 2022, it was sitting at $1,290. So in just the last few years, my dividend income has absolutely exploded. And if we zoom in and look specifically at the month of December, again, a daily dividend calendar is going to allow us to see what days we were paid dividends. So we had a few good days here from the 2nd to the 5th, pretty good day here on the 10th at $42. And then here was my big dividend day on the 16th at $927. And then another pretty good day on the 27th, close to about $50. So overall, when we compare how much I made in dividends in 2024 compared to 2023 and prior years, it's clear to see my dividend payments are growing and at a high rate. But the question remains, how long will it take me to achieve my long-term goal of one day living off dividend payments? And we can answer that by looking at my portfolio projection. And we're going to project this over a 30-year time period. And all we're doing is taking my starting portfolio size and making some assumptions. We're going to assume I attempt to make $2,500 monthly contributions, which, to be fair, I have failed to do over the past couple of months. But again, this is the goal for an average monthly contribution. We're assuming a modest 7% price growth rate and a 7% dividend growth rate and a starting dividend yield of 3.5%. So again, we're going to project this over a 30-year time period. Now, one of the things we have to understand is inflation compounds over time, just like any other investment. So for example, if your monthly cost of living is about $4,000 and inflation averages about 2%, we can see, yes, as of right now, monthly cost of living would be $4,000, but 30 years from now, it would jump all the way up to $7,245. And this is why dividend growth is so important. If you had a high yield stock, yes, maybe you could get above this black line fast, but high yield stocks don't necessarily grow their dividend payments at a high rate, so a lot of the times people make this mistake, and eventually their cost of living surpasses their monthly dividend income. But if we look at my live off dividends analysis, we can see right here, the point at which the red line surpasses the black line is the point at which we could live off dividends indefinitely, even if we stop reinvesting our dividends, because our dividend growth rate is higher than the rate of inflation. So let's see how far away we are. If we come over here, let's go ahead and zoom in a bit, and we'll start to scroll down. So we can see once we get to about year 5, we're still not at a point at which we could live off dividends. Let's continue to scroll down. Once we get to year 10, We're still not at that point, but we're starting to make some serious progress as our monthly dividends would be about $3,400 and monthly cost of living $4,900. So if we keep scrolling down, we can see right here in year 14 is the point at which we could live off dividends forever because my monthly dividends has finally surpassed my monthly cost of living. And again, even if I stop reinvesting dividends, I could still live off dividends forever as long as my dividend growth rate is above the rate of inflation. So let's go ahead and get a higher level overview of what my portfolio would look like. If we come over here and look at my future portfolio outlook, with those same assumptions, just 5 years from now, my yearly dividend income could be about $18,800. But look at this difference. If I don't reinvest my dividends during that time period, it drops all the way down to about $16,328. So let's go ahead and switch this back and look at it from 15 years. 15 years from now, I could be making close to about $71,000 in dividends, but if I don't reinvest dividends, it drops all the way down to just $47,000. So obviously reinvesting dividends plays a major role in the compounding effect. And then 30 years from now, if I don't reinvest dividends, I could be making about $157,000 in dividends, but if I do reinvest dividends, it jumps all the way up to $367,000. So the month of December was a record-breaking month for my portfolio, and so was 2024 in general. And regardless of how the market performs in 2025, I can be confident that my dividend income will continue to climb higher and higher. Now, like always, if you'd like to be able to download this spreadsheet or any of my other spreadsheets and also get access to the Ticker Data add-on in Google Sheets, then you can head over to tickerdata.com at the link in the description. There is currently a New Year's sale. Use code 2025. So with all that being said, thank you guys so much for watching, and please don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel.